Check 1, 2. Test. 1, 2. Go ahead and mute this mic. Yeah, we don't need that on. The one that was just on, so that was Worship Kevin. One, 2, check. 2, 1, 2.
And you would wake people up that maybe for a long time didn't know they were
mention while Jeff's doing that this is the church, this is Jeff's church. We meet here because we're fortunate that he offers us this space, so this isn't like a Journey Church group. But we do feel like it's important to open up our meetings with a prayer as well as Pledge of Allegiance, because I personally, and I think a lot of people agree, not everybody has to, that's your free right, but I personally feel like this isn't something that we can do on our own, and we're gonna need a lot of God in the picture to do what we're doing. But anyways, so I think that's important. I hope that it doesn't turn people off to not show up, because there's a lot of other stuff that goes on in these meetings and in this group besides an opening prayer. And if you're not okay with prayer, that's fine, we're okay with that, but just hang out for the meetings. Douglas County Citizens Coalition is a group that kind of got started mid-August. We wanted to have a local county focused group that could try to organize to take some local action in Douglas County. This is our mission statement. We're committed to not just complaining about things and sitting back and seeing it happen around us, but actually to take action to protect our constitutional rights and freedom. Basically, as far as some of our guidelines, we're not really out there. We're not on social media, besides we have kind of an invite-only private Telegram group, because we don't want to drag a bunch of people in that's wanting to take us down. So we ask that people don't just blast our information all over social media. Do share with people. If there are some like-minded people that you think are interested in what we're talking about and what we're doing, invite them. You can have a Telegram link, invite them, give them our website. Do you have our contact info slide, Jeff? With our website? We recently created, thank you to Eric and the Nielsen family, a new website, which will hopefully be easier for people to get information through. We have an email, we have the Telegram, we have our emergency alert number. Anyways, this is our information. Oh, business cards, that's something we didn't get done this week. Put on our list of things to do. Anyways, so these are some ways that you can get information. Our website is still developing, but it's got some great links and information on it. It's got our school district information. You can go there to find out our local action items if you want to be involved with those. So you can sign up, put your email in, so I think we can give updates that way. It's a great website. Check it out. Share it with your friends. Don't necessarily share it on Facebook, but share it with your friends. And if you have some questions about Telegram and how you work Telegram or get on it, stay after and ask Jeff. Okay, so again, we are committed to taking local action. I'm not the leader of this group. Jeff's not the leader of this group. The leader is everybody who's part of this group. And we need everybody, all hands on deck. I need everybody. Janae needs everybody. Everybody here needs everybody, all hands on deck to help stand up to the stuff that's happening. That means simple stuff. Going to Board of Commissioner meetings, watching city council meetings, your school board meetings, even if you don't have kids in that school district. Start attending the school board meetings and asking questions. Email. You can always just email and ask them some questions, or make a phone call. You can call your representatives. But, I mean, as far as that's like a really simple thing that you can do as far as taking action. Get on a precinct committee. We have a lot of open spaces on the Republican side of the precinct committees, and that's why a little bit of why we got caught asleep at the wheel, because the other side is not lacking in their precinct committee people. So we need to get those filled up, and those people have a lot to do with our local elections and who is elected and how they're elected and all of that. So they're really super important. And what's going on at the national level starts here at the local level, grassroots and local action. So that's how you can be impactful. That's how you can do something and make a difference. It sounds silly. It sounds like it can't be very impactful, but it's very important to start showing up to those meetings and asking these people these questions. You know, simple stuff like the schools. You know, what's your position on CRT? What's your position? You know, what are you going to do about the mandates? So please, 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 if you feel inclined. Also, I don't also want to give the message that you have to do what we say to do or you're not in the club. That's not what I'm saying either. We're working hard on helping the Winston-Dillard School Board recall. There are some school board members that we believe that they ran on a Republican platform and are not upholding their oath to that platform. And so we think that it's important for a school who's willing to try to get local control back, that they should have that ability to try to do that. And so that's why we have been supporting that recall. It's up to all of you to do, your diligence, take a look at it. If it's of interest to you, find out for yourself why you agree or disagree with the recall and then support it or don't. We try to bring these local action items to our meetings because we find that it's easier to provide stuff to people to get those things done. Like if we put the letter in front of you and have you sign it, we'll mail it, then it'll get done. That doesn't mean we're saying you have to do everything we say and you have to believe everything we believe. We believe in constitutional rights to freedom. That's that. So whenever we're up here talking about stuff, make up, do your own research, make up your own minds about it. But if you are interested and you do believe in it, please take action, and please, no matter what we're saying, our opinion is, start attending those meetings and tuning in. We have a few people who have expressed some interest in doing a canvassing effort. I think a lot of people tend to think that if the last year's election was fixed, that a lot of these other problems that we are facing would be fixed as well. So there's a lot of canvassing efforts, cleaning up voter rolls across the whole country right now, and so people are doing it everywhere. And we have some people who are very interested and other people who have signed up to help, and so there is a process in motion. There is some people that, that are joining forces. There is people who are also not only working on trying to put together a canvassing effort, but voter law, like that we've met a couple of times to work on how we can change the mail-in voting process. Cleaning up the voter rolls, people getting duplicates, people getting wrong names at their addresses, all of those things. So one thing that I was going to mention is that, yes?
I called you, but I got the voter rolls.
You got them for the state?
Yes. I got them, all of them. I told Michaela and she told me to
That's $500 to get the voter rolls for the states, you guys.
I got them. I was supposed to tell you that before.
Well, that's great. That's great. We got the voter rolls. If anybody feels inclined to donating to the people who paid for the voter rolls so we can work on cleaning that up, that'd be great. Oh, okay, never mind then. What about the other list? There was the other list. The voter rolls was 500, and there was another list that was 500.
Get that.
Okay.
So I got the one.
Okay. Well, so there are some, like I say, some efforts going on for canvassing, for cleaning up the voter rolls. So if that is something you're interested, I have some people's names who've signed up already for canvassing. If you haven't signed up for canvassing or working on cleaning up voter rolls or working on changing the voter law, because we would like to get rid of the mail-in voting. We would like to go back to in-person, small precinct, on paper, make it legit, make it harder for them to cheat. So, but you can't just change it by county. We found out in the election law it has to be by the whole state. And so having found that out, we started reaching out to people. I don't know if you guys are on Facebook or Telegram, but I myself have like 20 groups on Facebook and 20 groups on Telegram that I follow, just that have to do pointedly with the state of Oregon. So I started reaching out to many of those page admins and saying, hey, we'd like to connect, because we feel like it's time to connect people across the state to work on some of these efforts together. And so I heard back from several people. I made contact with the new Timber Unity president. They just had a big meeting on Saturday, elected a whole new board. They seem to be, I've talked to a couple of them in the last couple of days, very reinvigorated. They're not just about the timber issues, they're about all the issues, and they're ready to move, mobilize. They've got some really cool ideas to help the state, and it's basically we would work in concert, not necessarily partnership, but in concert with them. And also we could kind of take some notes from them as far as how to continue to, model our coalition into a large network for the county and reaching out to other counties to do the same. So, I mean, that's something I'm really excited about, because that's what we need. Is there's power in numbers, and there's hundreds, there's thousands of people that are feeling just the same way we are across the state and wanting to do something. So if we can all get on even close to the same page, we can start really doing something. So that's a huge goal for us, is to get everybody connected in that way. And then the other thing is, too, some people have mentioned to us, and we've talked about it before, the importance of these school board meetings. If we could get somebody who is willing to organize maybe a school board like watchdog committee, where there's a group of people who are committed to kind of following some of the school boards and the issues going on and keeping everybody else in the coalition abreast of what's happening. That would be great. So if you're really interested in that, that's your passion, let us know afterwards. Maybe I have a clipboard somewhere we could do a sign-up sheet in the back. So it's really, really important to follow the school boards right now. They have a lot of easy outs that they're trying to use, so we shouldn't just let them take those. For those of you who don't know, I've been looking into and trying to research PMAs, private membership associations. We've had a couple of meetings on those. We've talked to a couple different people. We're still working on that information, collecting that, but PMAs is something that you can use for a school. You can use it for I'm gonna get my notes here really quick. You can use it for a grocery store. You can use it for medical, doctor facilities, schools, like I said. I mean, anything. It's just basically what it is it's a private membership between you and the people you do business with. So it's like they say, it's like a family. What happens in your family stays in your family, or what happens in Fight Club stays in Fight Club. Anyways, so those are some of the things that we've been looking into, because we have a lot of people who have expressed interest in those here, because you don't have to, basically follow all of these crazy government mandates. So a lot of stuff going on in the channel. I'm trying to get to my notes on the PMA. I should have had you resend it to me right before this, Janae. Okay, so they have a meeting scheduled with Ken Mason tomorrow, and Ken Mason is one of the guys that's been giving them information on getting organized for the PMAs, and there's some legal work, paperwork and stuff like that. So she has another meeting tomorrow scheduled. If you would like to be included in that, see Janae. She's right up here in the front.
Or if they have any questions they want me to ask.
Or yeah, if you have some specific questions about PMAs, see her so she can make a list to ask those. She's been talking with Wellspring Bible Fellowship, who is interested in the details, so they could have a K-12 school on their campus that is a PMA. And also there are a couple of other medical providers in our area that are very interested in this PMA also. Also, just to remind those who have been hearing the updates from the first gentleman we met with, Mike, he had said that if we worked with him to start a PMA for the DC Citizens Coalition, that the money that it would cost us to get it started, he would donate back to the coalition. So anyways, these PMAs have been around a long time, but they're, I think, kind of on the down low because they get around a lot of the government stuff. So they're just kind of now, more people are starting to find out what they are and getting information on them because they're less government regulated. So if you have questions about the PMA, we have a PMA channel on our Telegram page, and then Janae has basically been researching a lot of the PMA stuff. We also have Janae's provided an email in the back that you could take a look at, take home if you want. There's OHA is at it still, again, always overreaching their position. Tomorrow is the deadline to speak up for their proposed exclusion of students and staff if they're not vaccinated from their schools, daycare programs, and youth camps. The rule change will not offer exemptions, which is currently required by law for all other immunizations. So for people who've always been against vaccinations, you've always been able to turn in an exemption, but in their rule change, they're not going to offer those exemptions. Their rule change also includes the definition of immunity to exclude natural immunity by only accepting vaccine-induced immunity, which in turn will require every child to show proof of said immunity, creating an unofficial mandate as a COVID vaccine is not required, but showing proof of immunity is with a verification of vaccination card. So science no longer believes in natural immunity according to OHA. Tomorrow is the deadline. We have this paper in the back with the email address on it. There is an email that Janae prepared if you'd like to just copy it and paste it and send it, or you can create your own if you're inclined, but tomorrow is the deadline.
You just fill it out. You go to that site and you just fill it out. They already have it all.
So it's like a jot form. You just go in and you fill everything out. So please, if you're inclined to try to do something, make your voice heard about kids not being forced into being vaccinated, at school or youth camps or programs or anything like that, please go to the website and fill out some information. Is Olga here yet? Olga? Is she here? Have we heard from her? Let me check here. I have a note, Loretta, that you wanted a quick minute to say something, Sheila had said. Okay.
I wanted to give some good news.
Okay.
So my son Samuel was in the same situation as the people at UCC. He is a student at George Fox University in the nursing program. And when I first came, I think it was maybe the second meeting, I got to listen to Amanda speak, and I got information. And I thought at the time, man, I'm so glad that my son goes to George Fox because he won't have to worry about a religious thing, right? It's a religious college, you would think. Well, anyway, so ultimately 2 weeks later, he ended up with the same problem. They were not giving religious exemptions for the COVID vaccine. And so we contacted the Pacific Justice Institute. To make a long story short, they couldn't help him because they do not take litigation against a religious entity, which George Fox is, which is ridiculous. But anyway, we got a good attorney because of Pacific Justice Institute. They, on Friday, served them with a tort claim letter telling them they were taking them to court for 15 students. And last Wednesday, so it was not this last Friday, it was the Friday before last Wednesday, they received a notice. All of a sudden, they're accepting religious exemptions. And I know, and they found places for them to go do their practicals. Exactly the same as UCC. So we are winning. We are winning.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm so happy. So yeah, I just want to share that.
And it is, it is important for us to hear these little bits of good information because it does help to kind of keep us moving along. So that is great to hear. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but the nursing students actually paved the way for the dental program, dental assistant program students at UCC as well. So, keep up the fight is the thing. All these mandates are getting blocked in the federal courts, and they're starting to have to back off on the federal employees and some of that stuff. So we have to, like I said, take these wins, but not let it slow us down, keep us going. So usually we have a ton of action items. Tonight we have that email in the back, and we're really recommending to everybody to please do that. But we actually wanted to save most of our time tonight for a couple of people. Olga's running behind. I'm not sure where she's at. So I'm going to ask Conrad to come on up. I have this amazing cousin, Conrad, who I don't know how many years ago it's been I met him because he became part of our family, and a super fantastic person to be around. Not a speaker, but we're just going to have a conversation up here. So actually what I would like to say, go ahead and have a seat, Conrad. It's right here.
Oh, thanks.
So I am
Thank you.
going to ask, though, you can sit down. We'll sit down. Sit down. Have a seat.
One. Got it.
Okay. So I am going to actually ask that if you guys have any comments or questions, that if you would wait until kind of, we're done talking and maybe talk with Conrad or Olga, hopefully, if she shows up afterwards. So we're playing this by ear. So, Conrad, can you tell...
Oh, it's interview. I thought it was.
You're going to talk, yeah. Can you tell us all... It's like, wasn't there something, I'm telling you, there's like an Insider Studio or some show before. Anyways, Conrad Farowski, could you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you're from specifically?
Thank you. This is not staged. So my name is Konrad Farowski. I'm from Poland. Came to the United States in '91, late '91. I think it was November, and settled down. So in '92, I was married to my wife Tina, and we had 4 daughters. And it's a long story. So, of course, coming from communist country, beware. So I was born in 70s, 1970, and so I have to, I don't know where to start. So many things.
Start at the
So
beginning.
So my dad's dad was living in today's Ukraine, was a part of Poland, and in 1938, they had to fled Ukraine. They were facing slaughter because the Bolsheviks were already moving towards Poland and just slaughtering everybody from east to west. So in the middle of the night, they got word and they had to leave. So he was a successful businessman over there, had a huge mill, and he had to wrap everything up and leave in the middle of the night with the whole family, and they settled down in today's Lublin, which is southeast of Poland. So and then he went underground, was fighting east and west, Bolsheviks and Nazis, and of course he was underground fighting at night and working during the day. That's the way it was. And the women were mostly housewives, cooking and raising the children. And he got imprisoned in 45, beginning of 1945, in Lublin, a famous castle. We went there a couple years ago when Tina and the kids saw everything, where they were stored, basically. So it was just multi-story castle, and it was just caked with people. So then, I'm not sure, it was early spring of 45, everybody needed to be exterminated, so I think they started transporting them to Auschwitz, whatever the trains and everything, to the famous train station. So I don't know how he did it, but he escaped by the grace of God, and somehow, we don't know how. I'm gonna find out. I'm still researching all that, but then he went back in the underground and died free man. So that's the story. On my dad's side, well, my mom's side, we lived in probably an hour and a half from the Lublin, from that place. And my grandma was a housewife, of course. They were farmers, and my grandpa was, they both were farmers, and my grandpa was, doing work in the fields during the day, animals and all that, and at night he was training underground soldiers in the forests, nearby forests, under penalty, under death law. I mean, if anybody would find out or any kind of leak, your whole family is just done, including kids. They didn't take the kids, so that's the brief story. And my grandpa ended up, I think, the Polish army, just briefly before the war was over. So that's the story about my grandma's and grandpa's brief story. Well, they lived in the bunkers with their kids, raising their kids for a long time in the bunkers. Just like my wife listened to all the stories about living on potatoes and everything else, just limited food. So, and it was pretty rough under artillery, but that's all. Yeah, so that's that. So
what brought you here? What brought you to the United States?
luck, God. So I came in 1991, and with the construction company, and American construction company, which was working in our area, building cold storage plants. We live in the biggest area, and one of the biggest area of the apple growers, basically, in Europe, basically, and all kinds of soft food and everything else. But they fought for me. It was impossible. I was 21, and it was impossible to get out of there. But
So you got lucky.
very.
So, what warning signs do you see? Do you see anything happening right now in the United States that you see as warning signs that take you back to your family's history from where they're from?
I can't see anything else but warning signs. This is horrible right now. We are so deep in it right now that I don't know how to describe it. You know, it's this media suppression, and it's horrible. You know, basically, you know, the Constitution's been just trampled and just stomped over. That's number one thing, you know.
How does it feel to feel like you were lucky to get out of where you were and to come here, and then to be this time later, to now be here and see where our country is headed right now?
Well, there was big relief escaping the totalitarian government. I mean, you have no you have no word. You just, the guidelines are for you, and that's it. All there is guidelines, just like what's becoming over here with the installed administration.
Mm-hmm. So, if you had an opportunity to give a warning or a bit of advice, something to that extent, to people who maybe have thought or even still think everything's fine, we're just, we just got to keep our heads down and keep going, you guys are conspiracy theorists, everything's fine, we go through ebbs and flows and ups and downs for the country, we're going to, this is fine. What would you say to that? Well,
you have to study history. You have to be some kind of historian. I've learned history from my uncles when I was a kid. In 6th grade, in elementary school, I got in trouble. My dad was called because I failed the Russian test so bad that they called my dad. And he could be basically thrown in prison, but he didn't.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, and that's it was just a normal thing. So that was my first fight, because being in 6th grade, I already knew the history. I mean, big chunk of history, what's going on.
Do you think the schools are teaching history right now? Accurately?
Over here?
Yes, the United States schools.
I think it's horrible, because I think the kids are completely disconnected with the history. Completely disconnected. Geography and history, it's horrible, I say.
I agree. I don't know my north from my south.
So
I blame school.
Sorry. Just being in school, we never had, all the way to 18 years old, I never had real history book in the school. Everything was just total lie. I mean, just total lie what you could basically comparing to CNN. So listening to CNN and reading history books in Poland when I was growing up is the same thing, basically.
Really?
Well, I'm just comparing.
So, what can we do? What can we do to correct or change the path that we're on right now? What do you see? 2
things: believe in God and uphold the Constitution. Cannot break it. You have to stand up tall. I mean, my grandparents never gave up. they went on their knees and they got up every time.
So regardless of the cost, regardless of our busy lives, regardless of what we think is important or did think was important before, this is what's important now. Would you, doing what you say, standing up, upholding.
Absolutely. You have to show the evil, show the face, and you have to stand up.
Yep.
That's what people in Poland did. That's how we broke the communism.
How is it there now, where your family lives?
Last 5 years, that things changed because we have an awesome president. So, God-fearing, and I just found out like 2 years ago that all the presidents after the Berlin Wall collapsed, the system basically, all the Polish presidents were installed communists because they had so much power and money, and you really have to research who you're voting for. You really have to dig in
Yeah,
very deep.
and not just take a party, not just vote for them because of what they say, what
Yeah,
party they are.
Exactly. Color doesn't matter. Language, none of that matters. Just what you stand for, what the guy stands for.
Right.
And you better deliver.
What kind of party system is there in Poland?
Democratic. So, but the
Um,
opposition is very strong, just like here. We're talking brown jackets level.
What does your family at home think about? Do they know what? You talked with them about what's going on here? They aware of what's going on in the free nation of the world?
Yes, it's just globally the same thing right now. It's just globally every country's basically in chains,
Yeah.
because globalists own the biggest companies, and they have all the money right now, all the resources, money, and that's the whole truth. And they buying people out. They buying governments out. So they supporting Polish opposition right now. Soros, Rothschild and all these guys. You probably guys are informed. All that evil stuff. So,
Yeah.
and it's getting really bad. We're to the point they're gonna start shooting up the babies over here. So,
Yeah.
beware.
What's next? The babies
Be
are
ready.
coming next.
And I think my prediction is lots of false flags, and they're
Right.
gonna go after guns.
Oh yeah.
And they're going after guns. It's over. This is the last country standing.
'Cause look at Australia. What's going on in Australia?
You're done deal. If you lose your rights to guns, you're done. The Poles don't have it right now. They were disarmed after World War II, and it's not good. And you have all these Russians basically hovering over Eastern Europe, and only the army can protect. The people don't have anything. Pitchforks. That's about it. So it's pretty sad situation, but so the huge indicator is gonna be over here. So basically, in my opinion, they're wrapping up this whole medical tyranny with the babies being shot up right away,
Mhm.
coming from the womb. Not talking whatever else they're doing, but and they're gonna be false flags, and they're gonna go after guns, and somebody's gonna give up, but not me.
Not me.
Amen. Well, I know that. So believe in God and Constitution
And stand for it.
and stand for it.
And don't give up your guns.
Never.
Never. I want you to stay here if you don't mind. Olga, would you come on up?
And I have to clarify some things, of course, with Olga, because she's from Russia, and I love Russians and Russian people. I've been to Russia. They're beautiful people. They're just like Poles, they've been destroyed with the all these political agendas and totalitarian government is just ridiculous. I mean, we have a chance to stand up now.
Olga, why don't you tell us where you're from? Okay, so I moved here in '97 from northern Siberia, which is the city where I'm from. It's the capital of Republic of Sakha, Yakutia, and it's the third of the territory of Russia. So it's a big republic, big place. And my city is located about 200 miles from the Arctic Circle, so it's very north. It's an eternal permafrost, which is fascinating. We actually have the only Institute of Permafrost in the world. There used to be one in Canada. And I used to do tour guides for tourists during summer when I was a kid. So anyway, fascinating stuff. And the coldest it gets, their registered temperature in my hometown was minus 86 Fahrenheit. So it's really, really cold. And the, snow melts in May, comes in September. Yeah, it's pretty grim. But the reason why, and it's an Asian republic, so I was the minority there. But the reason why I grew up there was because my family was deported there from Central Russia and from Ukraine. And so I guess I can start with that story. And I was texting with my sister. She actually got her master's from University of Oregon in Eastern European Studies and History. And her thesis was on special settlements and exiles in Russia. And there's a paper that she did. It's a 104-page paper. She interviewed 25 families that would speak to her about their experience from our hometown, including my grandfather, my great-grandmother, who lived to be 100 years and 12 days old, my mom. And so it was their stories, real people. So fascinating paper, but just, very hard to read. And I've been telling her she needs to publish it. I've shared it with some of you here. And if you read it, you know what I'm talking about. So I think I'll read some excerpts from it too, if we have time. But the main thing what I wanted to start off with, number one, because I like to look at the bright side, is regardless of what happened, people came through. And even my grandfather now, who's still alive, he's 92 now, they were grateful for what they had. And we also grow up with this gratitude. And sometimes, there were four of us growing up. I was born in '80, so, I lived a good life in the Soviet Union. And my parents made sure of that. I was the oldest of four. And my mom said sometimes they didn't know where to get food because they had money, but there was no food at the stores. If you guys freaked out when there was one aisle of food missing a year and a half ago, that's cute, because when we would go to the store, there was one aisle exactly of food there, but everything else was missing. And how it's going on right now, actually, again, and how it used to be when we would go shopping in Soviet Union, you actually didn't go through aisles and pick stuff yourself. You come up to a counter and you tell somebody to grab it for you. So it was always done for you. You never were able to touch goods, and they're going back to that right now, by the way. And I remember as a kid going to a store, and we had vouchers because you had so much soap you could get, so much sugar, eggs, and that was your allowance for the month. And my mom would send me to the store, and you would stand in line, of course, because there are always lines. And then it's a giant store. All the shelves are empty, and there's this one little, place with a few shelves that were stocked. And you would hand the voucher, and they gave you the stuff. But that's it. That was your shopping experience. The reason why we survived, we were lucky, because my grandmother, who was, in the 40s, in the 30s, 40s, was deported with my great-grandmother to Siberia. Anyway, she was in charge of the distribution center for groceries in town. So when groceries came in, that base would distribute them to the grocery stores. So she was able to grab some, pay for stuff and grab for our family. I like to tell a story when she grabbed a box of apples that came from China, and they were red, delicious apples. And when we opened the box, it had green oily paint all over them. So, you know, what would you do now? Throw them away, right? Well, it took my mom and me, you know, for 2-3 hours we washed them, because you don't just throw away apples in Siberia, you know, they don't grow there. So, you know, things like that, and I am grateful to live the life I live now. So, well, going back to how my family ended up in Siberia, and I don't know if you want me to go with questions, answers. Oh, and something else I wanted to say. I was talking to, well, actually, I was talking to my sister, who told me of her conversation with my sister-in-law the other day, and she has 2 small children. And right now, they're doing surveys right now in Russia, in schools, in kindergarten. They're asking kids to, if their parents have been vaccinated. So it's probably coming to a theater near you soon as well. So watch out for that, with limited access to schools, you know. And that's how it was before as well, because people were encouraged and incentivized to tell on each other. So neighbors were turning in neighbors, kids were turning in their parents. So people were afraid to speak out. Parents were afraid to speak in front of their kids. So just, you know, a warning, it's happening in Russia right as we speak right now. They're asking, you know, 5-year-olds, 8-year-olds if their parents are vaccinated. What are they going to do with that information? You know, we can only imagine, but I'm sure nothing good is going to come of it. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, so I'll start with my great-grandfather, my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother was born in 1912. She was one of 4 kids, runs in our family. I failed. Anyway, she was the youngest, and her dad died at war, and her mom died at 26 years old. She fell off a roof while fixing it. And so they ended up orphans, and 2 oldest ones went to live with relatives, and my great-grandmother and her young brother went to an orphanage. And so Russia doesn't have foster system, we have orphanages, right? So kids live in these communities, and I don't know, I think it's, you know, no, haven't seen what happens in foster care here, haven't heard stories, and teaching foster kids at my facility, we teach martial arts, you know, there's a lot of bad stuff going on, but I think orphanages are worse. Anyway, so the environment was horrible. You would, you know, kids were getting killed by other kids for telling on each other, but my great-grandmother learned a valuable lesson, never to, you know, tell other people's secrets, so which served her well in life. When she met my great-grandfather, he was heavily involved in politics, kind of like us, you know, from this end of politics, and he had books, and, you know, that he wasn't supposed to read, and he had apparently relatives who sold those books many years before him, and he got in trouble for it. So, but he was made a manager of a collective farm, and in Russia, what the communists wanted is everybody, you know, everything was supposed to become common. So that's why, I don't know if you've ever heard of a term, раскулачивание. So anybody who had anything, it was being taken away from them, and, you know, kind of like the Robin Hood, or given, you know, take from the rich, give to the poor. So it was all going to the government, and the purpose of it was, and the purpose of this whole thing is for you to have the government at, you know, as your idol, and to be dependent on the government. That's why right now in Russia, if they wanted to, you know, everybody can be dependent. That's why Canada is failing, right? The socialized medicine that they have. It's so easy to take stuff away. That's why we're still standing, because, you know, so much of the services that we receive, we can still make decisions, right? In Russia, if they wanted to, they turn off your pension, they turn off your health care. It doesn't take long, because it's all supported by the government. I mean, it's nice, and when we go back to Russia and, you know, I can get an MRI done for $50, right? It's wonderful, but right now it's not so wonderful, because it can be just stripped away from you. Socialized medicine has its perks, but it's very dangerous on the other hand. So I'm not proposing paying thousands of dollars for insurance a month, which I do now, and not getting anything out of it either. But there has to be a better way than what there is. Anyway, so my grandfather was in charge of this collective farm, and he would allow women to come during the night and pick up ears of wheat, right? Is that what they're, ears of wheat? You know, the wheat that, yeah, that would fall, that would otherwise rot, grain, yes. And so he got in trouble for doing that. And during that time, there was a new type of exiled people. They were called ukazniki. Ukaz is like an order. So there were a bunch of orders, kind of like mandates by the government, which were very stupid and illogical, right? So you could get exiled because you didn't put in enough labor hours, right, at a collective farm. You didn't meet your quota, right? And you would get everything taken away from you and sent to Siberia. So illogical, right? So, but that's what was happening. And so my great-grandfather was exiled for letting women pick up those weeds so that they wouldn't starve. And my great-grandmother, we grew up knowing that she was tortured. We knew because she had white nails and her fingernails were very flat. So when they wanted her to speak against him, they proclaimed him an enemy of state. And they were in this torture chamber, I guess, and they wanted my great-grandmother to speak against him. And so they were putting her fingers in the vice, hoping that she would say something. But because she grew up in an orphanage and she knew not to share secrets, so they actually, a guy came in and he asked, you know, the guy who was torturing her, you know, what's the story here? And when he found out she grew up in an orphanage, he said, just let her go, she's not gonna speak. So, well, either way, even though they didn't have any more information from his wife, they still convicted him to, I don't know how many years, but they were sent to Siberia. She was pregnant at that time, actually. And so she didn't go until the baby was born, and the baby ended up dying from pneumonia when they traveled because it was in winter. So the baby was a month old. So that's where they ended up. And then my so they had my grandmother who married my grandfather, who is still alive. She has passed on 20 years ago. Anyway, and so my grandfather grew up in Ukraine, and they fell under that category of when they were taking everything from people who had anything, and they had cattle, they had beehives, they were self-sufficient, they had a farm, so they were business owners, there were 10 children, everybody worked on the farm, they sold what they produced, and that's how they supported their family. And again, so you've probably heard that story, a knock on the door at 3 in the morning, and pack up all your belongings, whatever you can, and we're taking you. So that's what happened to him. It was 3 in the morning, they knocked on the door, they said they had 30 minutes to grab whatever they could, and they took them to a train station and loaded them onto the trains. They were cattle, you know, designed for transporting cattle, so, you know, it basically was an empty train, whatever you call cart. So, and they rode for a month. So whatever you grabbed to eat in that half an hour that they gave you to pack, that's what you had to eat. In their cart, he said 2 adults and 1 child died. But, you know, most people survived even though they were hungry for a month. And if you were lucky, so, you know, what my sister found out when she interviewed people for her paper, if you were lucky, you would be, when you were sent to Siberia, you would be sent to a village that already had houses that, you know, was already there. But if you weren't, you would be dropped off, you know, in an empty place, and you had to build. Well, if it's September, you know, and it's already getting in the freezing temperatures, you know, it's scary, right? So you have to act fast. Well, summers are not that great either. So my grandfather, when he was in the special settlement. Because we asked, why didn't you run? And he said, well, people ran, but in winter they would freeze, and in summer they would get eaten by mosquitoes. And you can probably look up videos on YouTube of my home republic. People would be holding out their hand, and it's covered with mosquitoes. True story. My poor husband, they love his American blood whenever he goes there. Mosquitoes are horrible. So, and truly, there was no way out. There are no roads. Still, they promised us a train where I was from. It's still not there. So the only way to get where I'm from is by plane. And the roads are horrible because it's permafrost and everything always smells, and it's just awful. Lots of swamps and things like that. Well, so I've kind of been rambling. So I wanted to maybe, if you would allow me, yeah? Yes? I'll read a few excerpts just to make it more official. So this is about my, grandfather. Let's see. Okay. So Vasily Slobodyan, he grew up in occupied Ukraine, and one of his older brothers, Stefan, died fighting in the Red Army, and another, Ivan, was sentenced to 15 years in the Gulag for his connections to the Ukrainian nationalists. So kind of like, if somebody a few months or a couple of years down the line were associated with us, yeah, they would be sentenced to go to Gulag, kind of like that. A third brother, Peter, returned from war in June 1945, but was soon denounced by a neighbor. So the neighbor spoke badly of him. My grandfather says, I was coming home from the field one day, and a horse wagon drove by. Peter was sitting on it crying, "Goodbye, Vaisa." Like his brother Ivan, Peter was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. On the eve of sentencing, their father died from the beating he received when NKVD came to their house. So NKVD was an organization, I guess you can compare it to OSHA, except scarier. Well, anyway, so they came to check on what they were doing, and so he didn't survive that visit. Vaisa's mother was left with 2 other sons. It was their turn to face terror. At 3 a.m. on October 21st, the NKVD once again showed up at their house and at our house and gave us 30 minutes to pack. A total of 7 families were transported that night, 40 kilometers away from our village. One lad, Slavka Baiko, tried to escape, but the escort guard sent a bullet through his legs. At the station, they packed us into freight trains, 90 people per car, with the doors shut and a hole instead of a toilet. We traveled for almost a month like cattle. No food was given to us. People ate what they managed to grab at the time of arrest. 3 adults and a child died in our train. Once in Chelyabinsk, the family was placed in barracks near a camp of German POWs. Vaisa worked in a coal mine until about a month later, a nice lady who was also deported with her children from Kiev and who now worked in a commandant's office, found him a pair of felt boots and a piece of pork fat, 2 loaves of bread, and a train ticket to, to the capital. And I don't have that portion. Anyway, so my grandfather actually got lucky because he was placed in a camp of the German prisoners of war. There were also some Estonian ones he spoke about. So that camp, there were no beatings. It was the Russians respected the German prisoners, and he learned a lot from them. They taught him how to build houses, and he says it's a funny story, but he had a blanket. And one time he left it on his bed, and he went to the woods to do whatever, and he came back and half of his blanket was missing. So somebody, helped themselves to half a blanket. Anyway, so hold on. So when he arrived, when that woman helped him escape, when he arrived at the capital, and by the way, when she helped him escape, so Russia has either 11 or 13 time zones, so that's how vast it is, right? Where we were in Siberia, so it's 6 hours by plane to Moscow, it's 6-hour time difference. So he went from Siberia to Moscow and then to Ukraine. Like, you know, it's not even crossing the United States. It's huge. I don't know how he did it, and he was 15 or 16. So imagine your teenager doing this on their own. Upon arrival at the capital, Vasya went through decontamination in the Kazan train station. Then, riding a subway for the first time, he got to Kiev station, managed to get on a train without a ticket, traveled to Kiev and then to Ternopil. He walked to his native village by night and hid somewhere during the day. His felt boots were soaking wet, so when he got to his cousin's house, they gave him a pair of German boots. In Chekhov, it's a village, Vasya stayed with the widow of his older brother, but someone, again, turned him in, and he was arrested once again. In jail, he turned 16, and then the story repeated itself. Armed escort guards with fierce dogs, freight trains packed with people, another journey to Chelyabinsk, and then to the northern mine in Kopeysk, where he worked along with German prisoners. In February, a mine shaft collapsed and Vasya's leg was broken. As soon as he got out of the hospital, he was transferred to the Amur region. For 2 days, we were kept without water, he recalls. When we begged our guards to give us something to drink, they laughed and brought us a bucket of tar. A few days later, in May of 1949, my sentence was announced, a lifetime exile in the far north with no right to leave. I didn't learn about the fate of my mother until several years later. So my mother actually did not know that her dad had a life sentence of exile until it ended in the 90s. So you can kind of compare the papers that they're now asking of people. So imagine if this goes through, right? So some of people will have their vaccination papers, some people will not. And so that's kind of like my grandfather. He didn't have papers, had nothing to do with vaccinations, but you can kind of draw a parallel there. So he was unpapered. It's like there are all these people, they didn't exist. They just didn't exist. So they served and they worked, but they couldn't move around freely. So when he got that paper in 96, I believe, or 98, because I was there. I had already gone here. I was an exchange student here, went to Rosebrook High School, 97, 98. And I get back, and finally Grandpa gets a paper in 98 saying that he's no longer a prisoner. He no longer has that lifetime sentence of exile. And that's when we all learned that, in more detail, that it was indeed true. Because anyway, and after that, he was able to finally travel again. So it says here, Vasily Slobodyan still has a paper dated October 1947, which has a record of everything his family owned at that time: a large field, a house, 2 horses, 3 cows, etc. What they gave us back is ridiculous, he exclaimed, looking at the letter from Ukraine. It was much less than what our possessions were worth. So I told those guys to stop laughing at us, better not give us anything at all. So we didn't take any money. So here's a little word about my great-grandfather. In 1948, am I still okay to go? Is it still interesting? Okay. The special settlements welcomed a new contingent of deportees, указники, what I was talking about, the ones who were under those weird mandates, orders, who were convicted according to various Soviet decrees. One of these decrees, dated June 2nd, 1948, about deportation to the remote regions of the country for avoiding work in the agricultural sector and for an antisocial, parasitic way of life. I think we could all be convicted of the latter, was applied to members of collective farms who failed to meet their Labor Days quota. And between 1948 and 1952, 33,266 people who were 33,266 people were deported under this decree. The usual term of exile was 8 years, but those caught collecting wheat, potatoes, or carrots in a collective farm field, even after the harvest, could be sentenced to 10 years with full confiscation of their property and possessions. The sentencing was most often done by assemblies, of the collective farm assemblies, which adopted the role of public courts. So imagine that. In 1948, so it wasn't even legally done, right? My great-grandmother told me that they just sat in a room with a bunch of, people who decided to be in charge, and they basically sentenced them. In 1948, their family was one of them. After serving time in the Solovki labor camp, which is another famous one like the Gulag, and fighting during the war against the Nazis, Stanislav, which is my great-grandfather, and his family moved to his native village of Karamazova in Vladimirskaya Oblast region. His widow, Polina Doronina, now, well, at that time was 96, remembers those days. Every day we walked to the field, honestly earning our labor days, and we had about 1,000 of them, but none were counted at the end. Our payment for hard labor was exiled to Siberia. The reason for that was Slava's kindness. When he acquired a managerial position in kolkhoz, in a collective farm, he allowed some women to go into the field at night and pick ears of wheat. It was the least he could do to help the starving people, but someone told on him, and one day we were called to a meeting. He was convicted under Article 58 and sent away June 1948. There was not even a real court, just a bunch of people sentencing us to 8 years. The doctor prohibited me from going because I was pregnant. Anyway, I already told that story. So, let's see. All right, I have a couple more things to read, and then maybe I'll answer questions, and maybe I'll be done. So, and here's a little bit about my mom. So Tatiana Emelianova also grew up without knowing that her father was deported from Ukraine. In fact, she did not learn the truth until he received his rehabilitation papers in the 90s. It also took years for her to find out about the fate of her maternal grandfather, who has been exiled to the north. So she says, no one in our family talked about deportations, but I still learned a few things by accident. When I had pimples, for example, my grandpa told me that he knew a medical doctor in Solovki who suggested eating seaweed and washing one's face as often as possible. That's how I learned that he was exiled to Solovki. On another occasion, when I was studying history in school, I asked him about people who let others gather ears of wheat. He said he allowed people to take them because otherwise they would starve to death, and those ears of wheat would rot anyway. That's how I learned a little bit about his arrest. In the late 70s, I found out that he was writing letters to the Supreme Soviet regarding his rehabilitation, and a few years later I saw his notebooks with some information about the arrest. It wasn't until 1991, however, that I actually read all the details in his file at the KGB headquarters in Moscow. The most terrifying part about Stalin's deportation is that they affected not just the special settlers, but the whole nation. By uprooting and decimating the country's intelligentsia and educated class, they hobbled the Russian economy, hurt the Russian church, and they affected country's political development. Even now, the memory of the past and the fear transmitted from generation to generation harm Russian democracy and hamper the development of free individuals. Not only those who went through exiles, but most of the Russian people still live in fear with a great sense of distress towards the authorities. People don't think that their voices can make a difference. More than that, they're still afraid that expressing themselves may be harmful to them and their families. That is why the majority of the Russian population lives by the principle, don't stick your head out or you'll get it hammered back down. And always remember the saying, even walls have ears. And that saying, I grew up hearing it from my mom all the time. I mean, still when Telegram came out, which is a Russian app, by the way, and I had it downloaded on my phone a couple of years ago. That's how, of certain matters, Mom would only speak to me if I called her on Telegram. So she doesn't know that, the technologies. They can hear things anyway. Anyway, of course, there are people who are indifferent and those who are very active in our society, but even the activists also work within the limits, unlike people of the free countries like the United States. They have a notion that the authorities have some sort of superpower over their subjects and can decide our facts regardless of the existing legislation. As a result, there's bribery, corruption, and a great disrespect for the laws in Russia. People look for loopholes in the laws out of belief that honesty and straightforwardness will not work. These convictions and unconscious fear came from the past, and it will take at least another generation for the people to realize that the law and the government can work for their benefit. That's a lot of rambling, but you know, what I want to add to that is it will take many generations to, you know, to get rid of this, and that's why in this country we need to listen to these lessons and act now before we're in the same boat, because it, you know, you have to, for the lack of the better word, beat it out of people. You know, not literally, but it takes time, even for me, right? And again, I was born in '80. My parents made sure we had a great life. I have nothing to complain. I probably have a better childhood than some of my American friends. And I lost my train of thought. Okay, where I was going with that. So even for me here, when I first came, like cheating at school, that's normal in Russia. And for me, and it's funny that now I teach character to people, right? Through martial arts. But I was so offended when my friend here didn't let me, you know, cheat off her Russian paper, English paper. And I know those are little things, but those values, you know, because you always had that mindset, where can I steal, right, for the benefit of my family? But not that stealing is bad, but it's like it's a good thing, because everything was always so corrupt and you had to be creative, right? There's no integrity. And I had to do a lot of work on my character to, you know, to go back to that, right? So if somebody miscounted your change at the store, score. I don't do that anymore. And seriously, and I feel that inside. Truly, if somebody, you know, didn't charge me, I always go back. But in Russia, it's like you look for those opportunities because the system is always against you, and it's a good thing for you to cheat the system. And if we're not careful in this country, that's what's going to happen. Because how many of you thought that it was okay to have a fake ID before? How many of you think that it's okay to have a fake vaccination card if it's going to lend you some services or food, right? Or it's going to help you? So, you know, those mindsets change. How many of you thought that it was okay to go into Costco when they started asking your vaccination status, and it's okay to say yeah, right? Well, like they had that a couple of weeks, and you were okay with lying, right? But that's how it is in Russia, because once the system, pardon me, screws you, it's okay to, you know, to do it back to them, right? Because it's survival. So, but I think we're still, you know, not all hope is lost, because we have people like us, and we still have our guns, right? And we still have organizations that are not dependent on the government. So it's important for us locally to support our businesses, for instance, right? Because my business is not supported by government, never has been. I don't want it. So, and I make the decisions in my business, right? Nobody, you know, Pete's driving, they're our great friends. Government is not taking care of them, but they're gonna take care of us. I know Daryl. Nobody's gonna tell him how to run his business, right? So we still have these pieces, whereas, you know, in other countries where it's so government regulated that it's hard to do. Okay. Either I take questions or I shut up.
Well, I think. Good job. First of all, I think you're doing an awesome job. Conrad, I think, was going to add something else really quick, too. Was it quick?
You know, I'll just go quick and I just briefly. I don't like my speech is limited. My words. So, post World War II in Poland, everybody was, like after 1945, everybody was wondering what happened to education. Education crashed, and it was hard to find the people, and this and that. Something for you to dig in, and I'm not blowing smoke. International business machines. Do you guys know what that is? It's today's IBM. Well, International Business Machines had subsidiaries in 70 countries all over the world for many years, and they were in cahoots. They were doing business with Third Reich for 12 years. So I don't know if you guys knew it, but I want you to briefly say something about it. But anyway, education was horrible after World War II and couldn't recover. But why? What was the reason? Well, the reason was IBM with a gentleman called Watson, last name, as a head guy, and they had a shop, punch shop in Warsaw. It's like a printing business shop, little shop near Ghetto, that's where they herded, as they were saying, herded the Jews. That's where all the Jews from Warsaw were imprisoned, and they were making punch cards, which was AI. The future, it was actually AI, it was artificial intelligence. And so when the Germans and the Nazis invade Poland, just like Swiss clock, every town, whatever bigger town was, they were going and arresting teachers, police officers, army officers, professors, just intelligence. So, as you guys can know, they did have the New York business already had future AI. They had everything printed out. They were in Poland for many years, and everything was printed. Let's say they were getting a certain district in Warsaw. They already had names. They already had addresses. There was no mistakes. They just park right there. Whatever house or multi-story building, they'll just wipe people out, take them out. Auschwitz. So that's the danger of AI, which is watching us right now, and I don't care. So that's the truth. You guys can dig in it, and it's a fact. It's a truth, and many few Americans wrote the books and many pages about it, and of course IBM is denying it, but there's no denial because I know where the shop is. And I've been there. I was in service for 2 years, and that's the story. So be careful. Don't invest in IBM. So something.
Yeah, I was going to just hand it back over to you. You guys can take questions.
Well, I was going to add about the education and indoctrination, right? That topic. I'm probably the most indoctrinated person in here, maybe next to Conrad, but I still remember all the songs and poems that we learned about worshiping Lenin, worshiping Stalin, worshiping the Soviet Union. And my father was a journalist, and a good journalist. And he used to interview us. So we have, little tapes with the recordings of our interviews. So I remember on one of those tapes, it's me lining up my family and going, okay, when I say, let's see, like when I say Soviet Republic or Soviet Union, and you're supposed to say glory to it, And then when I say Lenin, everybody yelled, "Glory to it!" So I was coming home from kindergarten. So I was 4 or 5 years old, and I was having my family do chants at home for our Soviet leaders. We actually had a portrait of Lenin hanging, and we sang songs to him daily. So I can still sing those songs. They'll never go away. I don't, but and then of course in school. So I was in 5th grade when the Soviet Union broke up, but until then, I was one of, so the first couple of classes you go, you get a little star with the baby face, like face of a baby. Oh, I should bring those, I have those, of the baby Lenin, right? Supposedly that's his picture when he was a child. And so you become Октябрёнок, which is like from the word October, because, October Revolution, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and then when you are in 3rd grade, you become a pioneer. And I was one of the first in my class, in my group, to be inducted because I was, a top student. And you learn the creed, and you learn, how to salute. And you wear a red scarf, and, everything is uniformed, and you even learn how to march. And of course, you pledge your life to, serve the party, the Communist Party. And, surprisingly enough, well, actually not surprisingly, if you're surprised that some people don't see the truth, we still have the Communist Party in Russia. And I guarantee you, every single person, if your family was not deported, you still somehow were hurt. But there are still people who pledged their life to Lenin, to Stalin, like, it's madness. So, don't be surprised when people here don't hear things. People whose family was murdered by communist leaders still revere those communist leaders. My friends who grew up, rebels, let's, fight the system, right? Kind of the irony of, what's that band that's requiring vaccinations at their concerts right now? Fight Against the Machine, right? Rage Against the Machine. Yeah, so like that kind of irony. So my friends, they're all, they all got vaccinated. The friends I went to school with. And because they're saying, well, the Russian vaccine is the best in the world. So, well, anyway, that's on the topic of indoctrination. And a couple cute stories. One story that I like to tell is when I was probably about 4 or 5 too, my mom was telling me how she was, when she was little, her grandmother would give her some money every day, and she would walk to the store and get some candy. And I interrupted my mom and I said, "Oh, that's funny, Mom. That's not true. There's no candy at the store." And so that was true for me. When I was little, there was no candy at the store. And we would grow up when, mandarin oranges. I still hang mandarin oranges on our Christmas tree because that's the only time we ever got mandarin oranges is during Christmas. Did you guys hang oranges? And yeah.
Same.
Yep. And so another funny story about not having things is anytime there was a line, and I know like some of you who I've talked to individually probably tired of that story, but whatever. So anytime there was a line, you would always stand in it because, like I said, people had the means, the money, but they didn't, there were no goods at the store. So one time, for instance, my mom stood at the store at this line, and when you get there, you finally see what's for sale, or somebody tells you down the line. So they were selling these purple Adidas tracksuits. I don't know if you guys know, Russian men like to wear tracksuits with dress shoes. If you ever see somebody dressed like that, he is Russian. So my mom got 3 pair, right, like 3 sets of those tracksuits because, you buy while it's still there, otherwise you missed out. It's kind of like toilet paper, right? If it's there, you're buying it. So my grandfather, my uncle, and my dad all had purple Adidas tracksuits. And a lot of the stuff in Russia, you'll also see like our old pictures. We would have similar dresses, maybe different color, but a lot of the stuff we wore was, bought like really quickly just because it was there. So, and one of my dad was a jokester, so when he was young, and he and his friends, they would make a line by, somewhere, and people would start lining up around them, And then they will slowly leave one by one, and then watch from around the corner how people stood in line for absolutely no reason. Okay, and then the last story, which will kind of also give you an idea of how it was growing up in Russia. So we had summer houses, which sounds lavish, but it wasn't. It just where we grew our stuff so we could eat in winter. So we lived in apartments, and then in summer we would have a summer house with potato fields and tomatoes, beets, cabbage, whatever. So, and there was no water, so the water was brought in, water trucks. And so there was this little hole in the fence to put the hose in. And so we would line up by that hole, pretending we were in line. And we played, one of my favorite childhood games was the drunken line. So we would stand in line and we would like shove each other around and pretend that we were, beating each other up, because that's what we saw growing up. People standing in line drunk. So, good times.
I feel like my kids live a really sheltered life.
Mine too.
This has been really interesting to me, and I brought my three of my boys tonight just because I knew we were doing this. It's interesting, you both had families that were run out of Ukraine, right? Yes. And their businesses, basically you had the mill in your family and the farm. If there's anybody have any questions? Where's Jeff at? Just run this around. Well, yeah, if you would run this around, that'd be great.
Did you want me to? Yeah, go ahead. In fact,
Thanks. When did you realize that things weren't all that they said it was? And then the other part is, where was God in all of this? Was he somewhere that, the elders talked about, or? Well, to both of you.
So as far as realization, I was born into it. So I lived a very, contrary to what you said, I lived a very sheltered life. Like, I didn't think that I grew up in any kind of hell with anything that I didn't have. My parents, they didn't discuss things in front of us, probably because walls have ears. That's one of the reasons, which sheltered us from that too, because they were afraid that we would say something outside of home. So they didn't discuss these things. So we just lived a normal, fun life, I grew up in the capital of a republic. We went to theaters every weekend. We went to museums. I lived a very cultured life. And I didn't know that we were missing anything. Sure, I didn't, I didn't have the clothes I wanted to wear because I was the oldest of 4. But I went to music school and I went to regular school, and we just, in summer we worked and farmed. So, I didn't think that there was anything to miss. As far as when talking to my, family about and asking them the same question, my mom talks about how, because it all started because we had the Tsar, we had monarchy, and before the Red Army came and decided that it's going to be their way. There is a movie you guys can look up. It was by a novel by Bulgakov, same guy who wrote Master and Margarita. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that either, but that's a good one, and they have movies about it. So, but I just had my husband watch it about a month ago. It's called A Dog's Heart of a Dog. You can look it up on YouTube, and it's got subtitles. But it's so current. There are discussions. So it's well, I'm not going to tell you about the movie, but the doctor in it talks about how, because he keeps getting bugged about this communist guys who want to, design rules for their apartment building and, take some of his rooms where he conducts his surgeries in his apartment. And he's like, you know, you guys talk about this disruption, but really the disruption is in your mind. You know, if everybody did what they're supposed to do, we wouldn't have to divide everything. He said, you know, I have 7 rooms because I conduct surgeries. You know, if you, instead of, you know, running around and seeing what everybody else is doing, you know, if you did your job, like if you work in a mechanic shop, you go fix the cars, but if you run around and leave your job, then of course, you know, things are gonna fall apart. If you, you know, instead of peeing in the toilet, pee, you know, off the toilet, you know, that was some of the, and I was thinking, man, that is what's going on here. People just need to like do what they need to do in life and leave other people alone, right? And that's what happened in Russia. We thought, kind of like you look at that stuff and you're like, oh, that's just stupid. There's no way this is gonna pass, right? Those talks about, I don't know, let's see. You guys are not sensitive, so I can say things. Like, you know, like insane things, like even the gender stuff and all of that. Like, yeah, let's talk about that, like the pronouns, right? Like, how dumb is that, right? And you think, that will never. And then it gets into the Congress, right? And then we have a man and a woman, right, at the end of a prayer. And then you're like, how did we get here? Well, so that was the same thing that was weird tolerance in Russia, because we all go around minding our own business, right? And then all of a sudden this happens, and you're like, how did we let this happen? So same thing, the intelligent people, you know, the expensive sound and snobbish here, but you know, they looked and they're like, there's no way this, you know, kitchen workers, that's how my mom said that, and sailors would take over, you know, like, what do they know? Like, their ideas are illogical. Well, and that's how it started, you know, and that's what we're experiencing here. How does that happen? That's just insane. And then this insanity becomes the normal. So I'm not saying don't be tolerant, but there's got to be a better way, right? So, and on the subject of religion, no, we could not talk about religion. Great-grandmother was crazy. That's what we were told, because she had a cross. She had a cross that was from like 1800s, and she had a Bible. And, you know, oh, she's just like, don't mind her, because my parents were scared. But then after the Soviet Union went away, so in '92, we finally found out that God exists, and we started going to church. And in '95, we came to our parents. My piano teacher took us to evangelists are great everywhere. They're so good at spreading the word. So, because, you know, Russia is Orthodox, of course, but I got exposed to it by, an evangelical Sunday school. We watched Jesus Christ Superstar. Well, anyway, so in '95 we came to our parents and asked if we could get baptized into the Russian Orthodox Church. And yeah, so churches are being restored, things are going back to normal. But yeah, we didn't grow up with this. During Soviet Union, there was zero talk about it, zero.
How about, Conrad, how about for you?
Well, I had a very happy childhood, a great life in Poland, just like Olga. I had an older brother, and you know, just my parents took care of us. We never were short of food or anything like that. I don't remember. It was just awesome childhood, and teenage years was just amazing. And we didn't really talk about the whole situation. Everybody, it was so obvious what's going on. It was just iron hand, basically. You didn't have a choice. There was certain criteria you had to follow. Otherwise, bye-bye. Your parents first. Well, that's why I didn't understand in 6th grade when I failed these things, got in trouble. My dad got called, and he was a cop. So there was big trouble. So, and later on I understood, just need to concentrate on family, concentrate on big things, not the garbage which is out there, you know. God number one, God and family. There was no constitution to follow. So pretty tough if you wanna think in a bigger picture. I mean, if you wanna go against the government, bye bye. You didn't have options. So everybody was concentrating on the family lives, and the family, like Russia and Poland, are very tight. So it's, but the danger is here, and I just see this whole situation, how their family are getting broken apart. No God, all this internet garbage, and then kids going against the parents basically with this medical tyranny too. So great big danger. So you have to pay attention to your family, keep them close.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody?
One more thing, I think the only thing to fix this whole situation in the United States, because I'm not speaking for any other countries, is start working locally, like what's going on over here, with your friends, with the family, with the friends, and counties, little towns, counties, and just stand up, and the people follow you to crush the evil. We don't have any other options.
Do they have guns that were hidden
In Poland? So after 1945, when the Germany was done, Poland, I think, had 1 month, maybe a little longer, for the people to return arms, anything you had, ammunition, arms, grenades, whatever you had, tanks, whatever you found, you had to return it. Otherwise, I don't remember how many years, but it was probably at least 5 years in prison if they found something. And there was many, thousands of cases when they snagged the people for that and put you in prison. You couldn't have anything, absolutely nothing after World War II. Can people have guns now? Well, if you hunt, you can have like a shotgun, but you have to go through the courses and, hidden. I would have one if I would live over there. No. Negative. No. I think it's just basically in people's blood. I mean, if you, it's a big thing if cops will find a pistol or whatever, any kind of weapon, you just go behind, you go prison or whatever. They prosecute you.
70 years of not having them, that's probably not. If you've gone 70 years, you're I would say a generation or 2 or 3. It's just normal. They probably don't feel the sense of urgency versus what they've probably heard stories as far as what happened to people who they did find them, I would guess. Just like you say, you lose that sense of history and education if you don't have it, and then a generation, 2 generations. And I think too, for what I've seen is it does not take very long for things to become normalized to people. Like for people to wear the masks, it didn't really seem very long for people. It seemed like it's just very normal for people to wear the masks. And the vaccine mandate that came up, we saw this summer, it was shocking to hear that people were going to be forced either to be vaccinated or to lose their jobs. And then pretty soon it's like, well, it'll be fine. I mean, it just seems like normalization happens pretty quickly, I guess.
Yeah, speaking of masks, I went a couple of times to the bank and they tried to put the mask on me. I told them this is federal offense. You cannot wear a mask. You cannot wear glasses in the bank. and the people didn't know what to tell me, so I just did my business and walked out. Every time. Works, because you cannot. That's a law. You gotta obey the law.
Does anybody else have any questions? Well, thank you guys both for coming up here and talking to everybody tonight. I mostly love their accents.
Who does?
I do. So anyways, I hope that you guys get something from all of our, I guess, meetings and everything. Thank you, Conrad. Thank you. It's possible. It's possible to do something. You can start now. You can start anytime and stand up and do something. It's, again, you don't have to be a crazy radical. You don't have to do something that's super time consuming. It's just paying attention to what's going on in your local meetings, sending emails, making phone calls, sending letters, those sorts of things. If you want to get a little bit more involved, like I said, we do have people that are going to work on some of the election stuff, canvassing, election law reform, initiatives, voter roll cleanups, watching the school boards a little bit more, school districts. So check our website, ask some questions on Telegram if you want, and or hang around and chat if you wanted to, and that's about it. Maybe have next time what? Oh yeah, we could potentially have more stories hopefully in the future for everybody. Yes?
Share one more thing.
Yes.
Something I just found out about. I'm really excited. So I want to share something really quickly, and it has to do with what they were just talking about. So I have a friend in Baker County, and they're having a meeting tomorrow. So I will let everybody know what I find out. But they, you've heard of constitutional sheriffs, that they take the oath. Well, they are going to be the first constitutional county. And it's really exciting, and I'm hoping that we can be the second. So as I find out more information about it, it's actually, it would take the sheriff and the county commissioners, but I know we can do it. We just, if all of us go down there together. So anyway, I'll let you know. Baker will be first, but Douglas County will be second. How about that?
So I think our next meeting is probably about 2 weeks. This isn't stop for the holidays, guys. So anyways, like we said, it's going to ebb and flow. There's hopefully people watching on the channel, so that there are some more, there's a broader audience that are keeping track and who are involved. If you're feeling interested in also the Winston Dillard recall is still, I think this is like the last week for a push for signatures. They were having some success with the drop-off line and pickup line in the afternoons at the schools. There's a couple elementaries and high school. If you're at all interested, I know the weather's bad this week, but go ahead. Come on up.
I was gonna say something about this because I was in the drop-off pickup lines a few times, and it is a rewarding experience actually, because people are so excited that this is happening, and then those that don't want it to happen, it's a rewarding experience because you see them get triggered. So either way, it's a win-win when you work the line. So, but I just, we thought it was close to 100. Turns out they still need about 300 signatures. There's 10 days left, and we're so close to the holidays. My, posts on the chat are kind of fruitless. Nobody says, yeah, I'll do it. So if I could ask, and Wendy, thank you so much for helping last week. So we had a few of us. I actually worked the McGovern line by myself. And I got 16 signatures. It was fun. Everybody was respectful. They actually kind of just line up, and you just go car to car. And those that don't want to say no, thank you. So it's really not that scary. So since you guys are all here, please, every single one of you, if you just do it once, If you can get 10 signatures, we can get to 300 with how many of us are here. So Wendy? Yeah, so, and they don't have school on Friday. So we really, if we're gonna do school pickup drop-off lines, it's gonna be tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. Oh, we only had one school. Yeah, I felt that he looked like he was endorsing us, if anything. That's how I took it. All right, so we have 5 schools to go to. Maybe on the way out, if you know, please, we're so close. I would hate for it to fail. And it's not even my job, but Jasmine is at another board meeting, so I figured I'll speak for her. So close, we can't let it slip away. So if you're here, please sign up for at least one slot. Please. Why is it important? Oh, so what this recall is about is getting rid of the 2 people on the board that are standing between us standing up to the mandates. The Winston School Board is going to be the first one in Oregon to stand up to the mandates if we can succeed. So after we collect enough signatures, it goes on the ballots and people can vote to remove those people. So, you know, that's gonna be the second battle to get people to vote. And then after we win that battle, then we'll have the majority on the board. And then then we have to find the 2 good people. So I know there's a few phases, so we're kind of in phase 1, so to speak, but we have to go through all of them to succeed. And after we have our people on the board, which we have 2 of them now, so there's 3 not good, 2 good, so we need to make it to where the majority is good, that will be brave enough to stand up to the mandates. And I don't even have people in public schools, but I think it's really important no matter who you are, because, you know, after they're going to come for homeschoolers at some point too.
Well, they are going to come for homeschoolers, but also the vaccination, you know, we don't know what they're going to do in the schools. If they're trying to, OHA is trying to change the rules now so that they're not even going to take exemptions. And, you know, for a lot of people, I think a lot of people think homeschool would be ideal, or charter school, you know, would be ideal for their kids, but a lot of people aren't in the situation where they can just homeschool their kids. We can't hear you. Okay, sorry.
I think that people would think ideally, because of the way things are in schools right now, it would be ideal for them to be able to homeschool their kids or put them in a different program, private school options or charters or something like that. But unfortunately, it's just not that easy for a lot of people to make that decision. You know, you have people who work, you have single family homes, you have people who can afford it, who just feel like they're not teachers. So it's like, you know, Olga said, she doesn't have kids in public school. Jasmine's kids go to a different school. But it's important to these people who are working on it, because Winston-Dillard can be a model for other schools. So if Winston-Dillard can stand up to the mandates, then that's maybe a little bit of strength and courage for some of our other school districts to go the same way. And it's not just the mandates for the vaccine, but it's the things that they're teaching and that they're, you know, that they're doing in schools. So that's why it's important to us. And I will say, kind of know your reasons when you go in there. And I did hear that someone actually asked one of the members as he was in the pickup line to get his kids, the guy who was getting recalled, if he wanted to sign the recall petition. So maybe you look on Facebook and see if you can find a picture of the 2 of them, and so that way you know if you're poking your head. But besides the drop-off and the pickup lines, besides those options, there is the sign up for, I believe, the Looking Glass store. I went and sat at the Looking Glass store table last week. It's undercover, still outside, so it's a little chilly, but it is undercover, not in the rain. And there were a lot of people that were really enthusiastic. They weren't all in the Winston School District, but they were very supportive of it. And then I believe the Winston Post Office also has, there's signups on our coalition channel. So they have time slots for just going and just sitting at the table. If you don't want to go chase parents down in the drive-through lines is an option also. And they even also have a list of addresses of, like, I think conservative or Republican registered addresses to go to get those signatures. So that's another option also. But the crunch is on. It's 10 days, 300 signatures. So This is the first week that this coalition got started. We had about, I don't know, there was 400 people that showed up to the Winston-Dillard School Board meeting. So I think it's, like Olga, I think it's doable, and it's all hands on deck, and it's a small piece of what, if we put our minds to it and get out and get the work done, what can be done across the state. So that's our 2 cents.
I'll take your name and phone number if you want to sign up for a slot.
Okay. See Olga on your way out. Anyways, I think that's it for now. Check out the website and the Telegram, and plan on 2 weeks. Merry Christmas, everybody.